Merlin. Tom Peregoodoff, President and CEO of Apollo Silver Corp. I'm sitting here with Cathy Fitzgerald. Cathy's Vice President of Exploration and Resource Development with us. We are, as I said, both with Apollo Silver Corp. We've got a portfolio of silver projects. We're a U.S. Focused precious metal company advancing the Calico Silver Barite Project in San Bernardino County, California, and some early stage exploration in Arizona.
Tom, Cathy, nice to meet you both. Thank you for the introduction, Tom. And it's a pleasure to kind of meet you face to face, Tom. We've spoken on the phone, but this is the first time we've actually met each other.
Yeah, good to meet you too, Merlin.
I'm really looking forward to learning more about Apollo Silver in the next half an hour or so, but it looks terribly dark over there. I mean, what time of day is it?
Yeah, it's about 6 in the morning here, Merlin.
I'm so sorry that the timetable has forced you out of bed at that ungodly hour, but let's make it worthwhile.
Okay. I'm building up quite a book of drinks that Matt owes me, so not a problem. I'll collect. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Now, Calico, Waterloo and Langtry, a silver barite project in California.
Correct.
My knowledge of silver barium deposits in the States is limited, should we say? So this is going to be an introductory lesson for me in this deposit. But perhaps could you just give me a kind of a quick summary of where the project is at, as where it's got to at the moment, and then later we can go on to kind of where you're going to be taking it.
Sure. We'll look at, why don't I'll start with this. So in February of this year, we announced the maiden resource for the Calico project. And as you point out, that's the Waterloo and Langtry deposits. We announced an inferred resource of 166 million ounces of silver. Important to understand that it's drilled out to an indicated level. But we've got some additional geotech information that we'll be acquiring, and that'll help us advance material into a measured and indicated. And that's the focus of the drill program that we just kicked off. In fact, the drilling just started a couple of days ago.
And a lot of that resource is based on historic data, drilled by the guys who bought it off, Pan American and Athena Silver. Is that right for them from the two deposits?
More or less. And then, of course, Asarco were the guys in the 70s and 80s who made the original discovery at Waterloo, and prior to that, Superior Oil at Langtry. And so we've inherited this entire database. Cathy, 42,000 meters. 42,000 meters of drilling. And then, of course, Pan American did the work back in when they purchased Waterloo. They did the confirmation drilling, the twinning of holes, and resampled 800 and some pulps from Asarco, and they brought that database into the modern era, which has given us the ability then to use that in our maiden resource declaration.
And you didn't need to do any confirmation drilling. You were able to create an NI 43-101 compliant resource from the historic database.
That is absolutely correct. Yes, Stantec was our independent QP. They had a look at the data. Cathy and her team, all credit is due to these guys. They were able to go through, dig up the assay sheets, tie those assay sheets to the databases, and to the satisfaction of Stantec. And here we are with 166 million ounces.
Excellent. And do you have the core? I mean, you can reload the core. It's been kept in a kind of decent shape. You haven't got the kind of one of those core sheds, which is just kind of a pile of broken bits of core.
Yeah, we have drill core from Pan American. We have all their RC duplicate samples, all their assay pulps. Asarco, we have some assay pulps. We have all their RC chips. So all the data that's on paper, we could verify with the labs, with the certificates, and then we also have the materials. And the goal, part of our program will be re-assaying some of it, but it's to get more comprehensive assay data, because we know from all the work Stantec did that even though some of the assay data might be older, like Asarco's, Pan American did a lot of work to verify it, and the data is really high quality. So
when you say you're going to get more assay data, is that because you're going to assay more elements to understand the geology better?
Correct. That's right. So, for example, Asarco assayed for silver, gold in some cases, zinc and lead, whereas we want to do the full package. We want to understand all the elements that are in that older data. So
it's been one of the transformations, hasn't it? The cost of multi-element ICP, kind of 36, 52 element ICP, just the change in prices has enabled companies to really understand that kind of whole rock geochemistry, and in particular look at the kind of the ratio of the trace elements as a vector to future exploration.
That's right. And classify the alteration for the same reason, right? So if we can classify the alteration of the mineralized deposit properly, we can, when we're prospecting, hopefully find more, being able to relate those kind of things together. So
in a sense, what you'll be able to do is to be able to correlate the geochemistry with the drill logs and build up a kind of an alteration map of the deposit as well as a grade map. Yeah,
exactly. So Pan American did multi-element chemistry throughout, but we want to just be more comprehensive, and then that'll help us tie in with our new drill data as well. So, and part of mapping the alteration would help target higher grade zones as well. So there's evidence of upflow zones and hydrothermal breccias like that rock you showed us, which would presumably hold higher grades. So we're just trying to increase the metal inventory as well as the confidence of the deposit, essentially, by better characterizing the material.
And do you have a kind of a rough feel for how much of the database has got the full suite of geochemistry and how much, and how much doesn't? I mean, how much is based on the older drilling? You said 42,000 meters. I think, Tom, in a previous call you mentioned with Matt, there are 430 holes. I mean, do you roughly know how many, what proportion is the old data and how much is the kind of the Pan American more recent data?
We do. I don't have the number on the top of my head. We did cover it in our recent technical report, but I think it's about 20% or 25% is Pan American. So they did a really good job of re-drilling and infill drilling across the entire deposit. So, and that was to our benefit. So they didn't just target high grade zones, for example. They drilled across the whole deposit, representative drill holes. So basically we have whole rock chemistry and a full suite of trace elements across the whole deposit, even though they might have only drilled 20%. So.
But you're going to go back in and you're going to fill in the detail on the remaining 75 to 80%, just to kind of, so you can actually fine tune things.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that will be covered with our new drilling too. So the focus of the technical program isn't going back and re-assaying data to fill in gaps, because our drilling will fill in a lot of those gaps. So we'll strategically choose some Asarco holes just to get coverage where maybe we're not getting coverage with our drilling kind of thing. So by the end of the program, we'll have comprehensive multi-element data across the whole deposit. Combination of drilling and re-assaying.
And I can't remember where I've came across it, either in an interview or in a news release, but I saw that Warren Pratt has been out doing some mapping with you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Warren did. Yeah. So and you may, if you know Warren, I think Warren's done a lot of work with Pan American, and so he did a lot of Pan American's mapping, and so then we brought him on board to complete some of the mapping at Waterloo, answer some questions he felt were outstanding. But importantly, we're the first group that's owned both Waterloo and Langtry. So he had never really been able to map Langtry, and we've been able to continue the geology from Waterloo into Langtry and have a much better understanding now of how those two deposits relate to each other.
And with him, Cathy, have you kind of, or perhaps Tom as well, have you gone through kind of a reevaluation of the geology? Have you kind of rethought about, have you got, because I also see that you're talking about this kind of the gold potential. Are you reinterpreting what's happening and the kind of the phasing of the kind of the mineralizing events?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say reinterpreting, but putting different pieces of the puzzle together. So Warren's been excellent because he's provided us with continuity of geologic knowledge. So he could come back to the project. He came last fall, and you know, well, I could walk around Waterloo with him, and he can say, "Oh, I didn't spend much time there in 2012. Let's go over there." So he provided continuity, and then he provided us with insight into things he saw previously and then could revisit. So what we could do by taking the data from the different previous operators was just put that story together, frankly, in a 3D model. So that wasn't something we acquired as part of the data set. So as far as we're aware, we built the first 3D geology model of these deposits. And basically just tying the drilling Pan American did with the drilling Asarco did towards the south, where there was the only mine in the district that produced gold as its primary commodity, we could understand the geology between the two. So Pan American drilled this contact between the sediments and the volcanics. And it's evident there's a 25-meter horizon with elevated gold up to 5 grams per ton. And when you look at that spatially with Asarco's data and their assays for gold to the south, and combine that with Warren's mapping, where he says, you know, and you can walk with him, he sees 2 kilometer long contact between those two with copper oxides and quartz. We could basically link different generations of data together to fill in the story, not necessarily reinterpret the story.
But I think interestingly, and Cathy touched on it, it's been that work that has enabled the recognition of how extensive that potential gold horizon is. Because interestingly, Asarco's drilling effectively, I'm going to make a guess, Cathy will correct me, but at least 90% of Asarco's drilling failed to pierce that upper Barstow, lower pick handle contact, which is the potential gold horizon. You know, so it really is untested.
I think it'd be really helpful. Do you have a cross section in your corporate slide deck or a map, just to get my head around the geology? While you're looking on that, I'll ask Cathy. Did Warren train up any of your younger geos? I mean, where are your younger geos from? Are they from kind of Denver, Colorado, or the Colorado School of Mines, or you know?
Well, so we have our geos are both American and Canadian, and range in experience from 2 years for new geotechs to 25 years. And what our lead project geologist, for example, has experience in the area. He worked nearby at Fort Katy, so he's seen the rocks. Warren is still involved in our project. So we just had a technical session with him, with the whole geology team. So he can share his knowledge about the rocks and what to look for when we log. And so, yeah, I mean, Warren, it wasn't just to have him map and run away. We have him involved to help us.
And one of his favorite things is teaching mapping techniques.
Yeah, and frankly, he likes this project. He said many times it reminds him of Navidad, and that's not a bad comparison. So in terms of geology, but yeah, he likes the project and he likes sharing his knowledge. So we're lucky he wants to still participate. So.
Yeah. Merlin, I can show that section here.
Yeah, please do.
There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Okay, well, okay. I'll run through it, and Cathy can't see it, so I'll run through it. I mean, at a high level, what you see down here at the bottom, you see the pick handle formation, which is a volcanoclastic package. Sitting on top of that is the Barstow formation, primarily clastic sandstone, and it's the Barstow that is the host of the silver barite mineralization. You can see there's a couple things to point out here. You can see the extensive nature of that mineralization. These magenta colored grades are all 100 gram plus gram per ton silver. And when I talk silver, when Cathy and I talk silver, we don't talk equivalents. These are silver grades. Okay.
Okay.
Another key thing to point out here is you can see some of the different generations of drilling. The holes that did actually pierce this contact, and you can see they're limited. There's there, there's here. Those are the Pan American holes. The Assays holes all held up in the Barstow formation. They didn't punch down to the to this contact. The contact is exposed, and we have, as Cathy pointed out, walked along and mapped that that contact, so we know where the surface expression is. And you see alteration all along the 2 kilometers, as Cathy pointed out. Iron oxides, you see copper staining. So there's no doubt that that has been a conduit for some fluids. And there you can see some of the gold assays that came out of the Pan American drilling. You know, and identification of this 25-meter thick zone that sits along that that pick handle Barstow contact.
Okay, that's really interesting. I've got so many questions on this section on this slide.
Okay.
So first of all, the contact between the volcanics, the pick handle, and the sedimentary, the Barstow, is that conformable, and is it tectonic? I mean, is it a faulted contact, or is it kind of a sedimentary contact?
So it's a challenging one. So some areas, when you're mapping on the ground, it looks conformable, but when you take it in a regional context, many authors, and including Warren, agree it's not conformable, and it is variably faulted. Old Assays maps called it the Waterloo fault. But you can't consistently map a fault along the length of the surface. But it's, as Tom mentioned, it is apparent it has been a fluid conduit. The Waterloo mine actually took advantage and extracted silver mineralization from this contact, and it's highly brecciated. We believe it's replacement style mineralization, so there was some pre-existing breccia there that was a conduit for mineralized hydrothermal fluids, essentially. The relationship to the faulting of those fluids, we don't quite understand just yet. Okay, so well, that's going to be the kind of the next question. Is that the main conduit for the mineralization of the? I mean, I think you've described it as a kind of a Carlin style deposit. Mm-hmm. Do you see other conduits or other hydrothermal centers? Or is that not yet defined? Yes, we do. So, for example, this section here, it's a highly silicified area, this section. And you can see there's 2 generations of silica. So one would be the bedding replacement style silica. And then the other are small epithermal veins that cross-cut the entirety of it. So this particular section is one of the high-grade areas. And we don't like to use the word feeder zone per se, but there's definitely been fluids traveling here, as evidenced by the higher silica and the higher grades. And sorry, and are they typically orthogonal to that main? You've got that contact. Are they kind of cross-cutting feeders or kind of fluid pathways? Yes. So, well, there's 2 types. So one would be these epithermal veins. They're small scale, and they're randomly oriented, but we do have higher grade structures that cross-cut the bedding. And in some cases, like in Waterloo, some of the historic drilling intercepted up to, well, more than 1,000 grams per ton. So whether we would classify those as feeder structures or not, they might be later. We're not sure yet. But Cathy, maybe I'll jump down. Can you see that slide? Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah. So, here what you can see, and again, just in the context of that horizon and the gold horizon, these holes with black dots that you see here are Assays holes that did not puncture that horizon. Yeah. The holes with the yellow circle around them are holes that were assayed for gold but did not puncture that horizon. And then finally, the circles, the drill holes here with the yellow and the red circle, assayed for gold and punctured that horizon. Okay, you can see the outcrop, the surface exposure of that contact along here. Yeah, and you can see that yellow. It is
altered. We do know that along the extent, but to get sort of to some of the centers you asked about centers, you can see here there's expressions here of these alteration areas, indicative potentially of upwelling centers. And Kath, you want to talk about some of the?
Yeah, that's right. So what I was going to get to is exactly that. There's hydrothermal breccias. So there's one to the northwest, for example, that Warren's mapped as prospective for higher grade materials. So we would call that a feeder zone per se, but whether it fed the main mineralization of the silver in the Barstow sandstones, we can't quite say just yet. Yeah, there is evidence of higher grade, as you call them, upflow or feeder zones. Yes,
and I see that's to the northeast. That's in the volcanics. It's outside of the sedimentary package, outside of the Barstow. Are there grades associated with the volcanic package to the northeast?
Yeah. So focus of previous work here for the disseminated silver has been on the Barstow. But in that cross section we showed you, for example, there were gold grades in that brecciated contact. Part of our upcoming program will be to better test that contact. So some of the mapping by Asarco down by the Bircham mine, I think you can still see the slide, right? They mapped mineralized material and surface sampled mineralized volcanics up to 30 feet away from the contact. And a lot of the historic mapping on the region, particularly around highly mineralized silver veins, there were disseminated silver in the volcanics around it. They're porous tuffs. So the answer is yes.
And Merlin, a lot of the production that came out of the historic mines in this Calico Silver District were actually the higher grade veins within the pick handle.
Okay. Could you just go back to the cross section really briefly before we drop the slides? Is there a kind of a meteoric supergene enrichment? Is it because it seems as if the silver grade drops off at depth, or is that just a function of the section that we picked?
No. Well, I can't see it. Whether the grade drops off with depth as related to supergene activities, we don't know the answer to that yet. That horizon with the gold, for example, is coarser grained. And we know that the mineralization is stratigraphically controlled here. So whether the change in silver grade has to do with supergene effects or just the stratigraphic nature of the control of the silica, we will resolve hopefully with our upcoming drilling campaign.
The controls on that mineralization, Merlin, and specifically the grade controls. I like years ago came from a petroleum background, and of course, so I start thinking about porosity, permeability, and the impact potentially on that. But we don't have the kind of control to really truly understand that yet. But the point you made is absolutely a valid hypothesis, especially when you consider that all of the mineralization, that Barstow section, it's all oxidized. So we don't have a sulfide mineralization component here. It is all sitting above that sulfide oxide transition zone.
And is that one of the things you're going to be working on? Is pinning down that transition down better through the next phase of drilling?
Yeah, look, it is something that we will be looking at. We will all of our holes will make sure that we punch through that and test that contact between the Barstow and the pick handle, and we'll drill a number of meters, maybe up to 10 meters into the pick handle. Right now, that transition zone, the level of that, the depth of that transition is very poorly constrained.
And I keep saying we're about to drop the slide, but I keep finding more things to ask about.
That means it's a good slide.
that picture there, that looks like kind of colliform, crustiform, kind of chalcedonic stuff. Is that kind of quite typical?
Yes, that's right. So it's a pretty typical low sulfidation epithermal style mineralization. So when you see vein type material, that's what you would see. When you see the bedding style mineralization, they're more dark, cherty rocks. So they look a little different than that, but that would be some of the vein style with barite and quartz.
And do you get any sulfides lower down on that, in that the gold horizon, or is that still oxidized?
I don't know enough about it to answer that. But we do have sulfides in. There are limited remnants of pyrite in the mineralized silver package.
Okay. So. Great. I think we better drop the slide down, otherwise the good people at Crux are gonna have my head. Carlin style gold deposits are famous for kind of invisible gold. Is that what you feel is here? You know, it's very fine grained silver, kind of disseminated through, and Carlin was also typically associated with arsenopyrite and arsenic-rich pyrite. Do you see any of that? You know, how have you done any petrography? Let's put it another way.
We haven't done any petrography, and I'm not aware of Pan American having done much in the way of petrography either. And you know, as we get more core as part of this program, then that'll be something that we will look at. You know, if we look at the arsenic content is not, I mean, obviously, given that it is of the style of mineralization with epithermal mineralization, there is a low amount of arsenic, but nothing that's, you know, I think lower than, yeah, exactly. Nothing that really causes much consternation. Yeah. And
I see that you're going to be doing metallurgical test work during the course of this year. Is that going to be from the holes that you're going to be pulling out, or are you going to use some of the older material?
So we're lucky. We inherited about 1,200 kilos, 1.2 tons acquired, a mix of RC and core, and they had shipped to McClellan Labs in Nevada, but they had, as part of their metallurgical test program, but they never executed that program. So we contacted the lab. The material was still there. It was in good shape. And so, in fact, we've already commenced our metallurgical test program. It's underway as we speak.
And it was already oxidized, so it doesn't, you know, it's not going to get any more oxidized.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
How long has it been sitting there for?
8 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Good. So can you just kind of go back and kind of, in simple terms, can you talk about, you're drilling 15,000 meters, and is that mostly into Waterloo, and is that infill, and how much is infill and how much is expansion and how much is kind of depth extension? Sure.
Look, I'll talk at a bit of a high level. So the 15,000 meters right now, we've got split roughly 10 to 12,000 meters of RC, and then the remainder core. We'll talk about the core, you know, and the reason for that core, but primarily it's for geotech, and there's other ways we can get that, and maybe I'll ask Cathy to speak to that in a minute. But the drill program has got 3 primary focuses this year. First and foremost is to advance the confidence in the resource. So moving material into indicated and measured. And that's a combination of that geotech information that I mentioned. As I said, to start, it's drilled at an indicated level. Okay, but we've got to get some additional geotech to help us move that material into indicated. And then, of course, some infill drilling and additional information to get it to move material into measured. A second component is expanding that resource so that we know, for example, down to the southeast, And if you want, at the appropriate time, we'll bring up a slide if you're interested. But down to the southeast of the Waterloo deposit, there are a number of holes, roughly somewhere around a dozen holes that we know are mineralized with silver, but weren't included in our resource calculation because the distance between our resource calc boundary and those holes was a bit too great. We weren't comfortable in using those in our resource. So we've got opportunities to add some shallow silver mineralization, and we'll go ahead and we'll do that.
By filling in, by bridging the gap.
Exactly. Yeah, by bridging the gap and doing a bit of infill between those known holes. So that's expanding some of the shallow mineralization. And there's other opportunities to expand that shallow mineralization as well, down dip. And then another component is the expansion of the high grade mineralization. You know, the global grade at Waterloo is 93 grams per ton, but we know that there's high grade intersections of, you know, multiple meters, tens of meters grading over 100, 150, 200 gram. We cap the silver grades in the resource calc at Waterloo at 400 grams per ton silver. So there is high grade distributed through that. So we're going to be focusing some work to expand the distribution of that high grade and better understand that.
And to do that, is that essentially putting in closer spaced drill holes known between high grade holes and low grade holes, so you can, if you get a confirmation that there's a high grade portion halfway, you can actually call it all high grade.
Exactly.
Up to that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then go ahead.
Oh, so that's more like that's kind of it's within the resource boundary. So it's quasi infill, but to improve the high grade portions.
Correct. And maybe I will I'm going to bring the image up so you can see that what we're talking about here. You can see that?
I can.
And there you can see there is the Waterloo resource, and you can see almost 2 kilometers of strike. I talked about those drill holes to the southeast. You can see roughly a dozen holes down there that we have not included, but we'll do the work to get those into the next resource. And you can see the distribution of that high grade mineralization. So we'll look again as to try and expand that as well. And then finally, this mineral inventory Cathy spoke about. There's on two fronts, the gold, which I think we've spoken about, Merlin. But the other potential co-product here is barite.
Yeah.
And barite, let's be honest, it's not a sexy mineral, as it were. An industrial mineral, its primary use is a weighting agent in the petroleum industry. But from our perspective, the real opportunity here is the fact that the U.S. imports about 90% of their barite consumption, and the vast majority of that importation comes from China. Barite sits on the U.S. strategic mineral list as well. So there's some real potential opportunities there beyond just the potential economic uplift. And Kath, you want to talk about the barite and your view on what we know about it and what we don't know?
Mm-hmm. Specific to the project, so ASARCO, for example, in their historic resource estimates did include barite. We did not in ours because when we went through all the geochemical data for the whole project, it became apparent that barium wasn't analyzed using ideal methods. So if you analyze barium with ICP methods, which are more appropriate to trace elements, you end up underreporting it. So it caps out at 10,000 parts per million, whereas the limited major element data we have shows up to 30% barium in these rocks. So
30% or 30% or 30,000 ppm?
Yes, 30%.
So 300,000 ppm.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's a major element.
Yeah.
That's a major element. Okay. Wow. Okay.
And so part of our work program will just be analyzing barium using ideal methods, so XRF essentially. So basically, usually a lot of rocks would be 50% silica, especially sandstone, for example. So these rocks could be 30% silica and 30% barite or barium. There's a lot of barium in these rocks. So we want to better classify the barium content to see if we can really get a good handle on the content, and then of course include that in the resource. And part of the metallurgical work in future will be determining how we recover it.
I'm not going to try and guess kind of metallurgical recoveries, but if you look at the kind of in situ value of 30% barium and 90 grams silver, what's the value comparison?
Look, Merlin, that's an obvious question to ask, and difficult right now because of the way barium and barite trades. Effectively what the oil industry will do is they will source barium as close to their project as they possibly can. So if you think about that Eagle Ford shale in Texas, for example, they're importing barium and it's coming in by ship. Now, can I displace some of that given that we're 9 miles from Barstow? What is Barstow? Barstow really is the intersection of a number of transnational railways in the US. So we do have a railhead very close. So, look, I think barite was trading at roughly 225 US per ton. Now, what it might be trading at, what it's trading at now, I don't know. And then again, if I'm paying shipping, can we get it to them? Can we get it to where it needs to be used in a cost efficient manner? We don't know yet, to be honest with you.
But do you see the Adriatic Minerals? They've in their Vareš project in Bosnia, they've got a silver, gold, zinc project, and they got a lot of barium, and they ended up not including it in the product stream just because the cost of separating it and the value add was too marginal for them. But
absolutely,
but they're not in the US. They're not by railhead. So you guys are going to need to do the work.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the first step is to basically better quantify the amount of barium and barite that is there.
And just kind of thinking about kind of, downstream, you're advancing the project to a PEA. Typically that comes after sorry. No, I was losing my mind. I was thinking it was, never mind. But do you have a concept in your head of kind of how you see this? Do you see it as a kind of a big open pit with potentially a kind of a gold kicker?
Yes. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The type deposit to think about in this space, Merlin, would be Rochester, which is the Coeur Silver operation. There, similar disseminated silver. They're mining material between 16 and 20 grams per ton on average. So that's the sort of when I think about type deposits, that's one that springs to mind, or I mean, type operations.
Mm-hmm. And is it also kind of a Carlin style? I mean, has it got that kind of that silicious
yes.
overlay?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Well, for me, I mean, I'm the thing I'm most curious about is the metallurgical recoveries, because I just remember doing my thesis on different gold processing types, and the Carlin style needed a bit of roasting and a bit of pressure oxidation. It was quite a tricky ore to deal with, but hopefully, I mean, what does Rochester use?
Rochester is a heap leach operation.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes, it is. But what they have incorporated into their flow sheet is HPGR, so high pressure roller grinding. And their tests and now their use of that has increased their recoveries by about 20%. So we are going to be testing that as well on the ore that we have from Waterloo.
And the beauty is that you've got oxides.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty. That's exactly right. So we're not going to be dealing with a lot of refractory issues, and so I think the fact that everything everything has been oxidized, I think it definitely is going to help.
Nature has done a lot of the mineral processing for you.
Yeah.
And presumably that means it's not too hard, the rock. I mean, what are core recoveries like? Is it actually difficult recovering core? Is it very friable downhole?
You look very blocky.
Mhm.
It is very blocky.
So you'll get a block and then kind of lose a bit.
Correct.
So
yeah, look, core drilling, and I touched on it, Merlin. For us, the primary driver behind the core is going to be the geotech information. We are going to be bringing in the optical televiewer system, borehole logging system for the RC drilling component of the program. And if Cathy and Stantec are comfortable that we can get the geotech information from the televiewer system, then we may divert that capital that we had focused on set aside for diamond drilling and put it back into the RC drilling bucket and put all the meters into the RC. So that story is yet to be kind of completed, if you will.
And the section you showed me, where the topography, it made me think that the strip ratio was going to be de minimis.
De minimis is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So ASARCO completed a feasibility study. They did their environmental impact review, and they were actually fully permitted to mine at Waterloo, and their strip ratio was 0.2 to 1.
Okay. Well.
Now, the strip ratio that we've calculated is 2 to 1, and that's because our cutoff grade was 50 grams per ton, whereas ASARCO used a cutoff grade of 25 grams per ton. So
and I think that your cutoff grade will be determined through your metallurgical test work and the geotech. And well, there's a whole range of factors yet to be established.
Exactly. And that's why we were happy with the 50 gram cutoff. It's a bit more conservative than 25 grams. But as you point out, that 25, that cutoff will be determined by the price of silver and the metallurgical process and the recoveries and the geotech.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. I have learned a vast amount in half an hour. I hope it translates into a learning for the viewers as well. And I look forward to hearing how the progress goes, and particularly seeing kind of what those met test work show, the petrography, understanding more about the mineralogy. For me, that's the key. And if you get a sweetener from the gold, then everyone's smiling.
Yeah.
Look, absolutely, and when we put out our maiden resource, Cathy and I hosted a webinar to run through the resource, and we've got an update webinar coming, which will be more technically focused, especially as the drill results start coming in, because as we said, drilling started earlier this week, so it's full steam ahead.
Mm-hmm.
When do you aim to finish your 15,000 meters?
Look, end of June or early July is the focus. We want to make sure that we've got enough time to get all our assays back to incorporate all the information into the revised, updated resource calculation that we'll do in the latter part of this year.
Brilliant. Good. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Again, congratulations for getting up so early. I can see dawn peeping out underneath the blinds behind.
The sun is rising.
The sun is rising. Good. Let the sun shine on Apollo Silver.
Thanks very much, Merlin.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.